The corridor lights flickered again, too slow to be normal, too rhythmic to be safe. Elias Varren braced himself against the vibrating bulkhead as the warship groaned like a creature trying to remember how to breathe. Smoke drifted in thin, ghost-like ribbons through the air, curling around his fingertips as he pried open the scorched panel in front of him. "Great," he muttered. "If this thing explodes, I'm haunting whoever designed it." The panel sizzled in reply, which felt like agreement. Behind him, footsteps, light measured, far too graceful to belong to a human soldier, echoed down the maintenance bay. Elias didn't turn. He didn't need to. He already knew who it was. The air around her always changed when she entered a room, something charged, something quietly regal, something sharp enough to cut through metal. Commander Arisyth Vale, warrior of the Ethrin line. Blood heir of the Ninth Spire, and unfortunately for Elias, currently standing close enough that he could feel the cool shadow of her presence fall over his shoulders. "You humans," she said, her voice as smooth as cold silver. "Why do you insist on repairing things while they are still sparking? Does self-preservation not exist for your species?" He didn't look up, mostly because he wasn't sure if he could look her in the eyes without forgetting how tools worked. "It exists," he said, trying to keep the wobble out of his tone. "We just don't use it consistently." Arisyth stepped closer. He saw her reflection in the metallic surface of the panel, a tall figure wrapped in fractured armor that still managed to look like it had been carved from moonlight. Her long ears, dusted in faint bioluminescent markings, angled toward him as if tuning into his heartbeat. "I am beginning to suspect you lack fear," she said. "Oh, I have fear," Elias replied. "Tons, mountains. I just manage it with bad decisions." A soft exhale, almost a laugh, escaped her. Almost. He risked a glance over his shoulder and immediately regretted it. Even damaged, even covered in battle ash, she was breathtaking. Majestic in a way that made the ruined bay feel like a throne room reduced to embers. Her silver-gold eyes studied him with a mixture of curiosity and something sharper, something he couldn't name. "You are trembling," she noted quietly. "That's not fear," Elias said. "That's the panel preparing to electrocute me again." As if on cue, the exposed conduit spat a spray of sparks. Elias yelped and jerked his hand away. Arisyth's ears twitched, an involuntary motion he had learned meant amusement. "You see," he said, "the ship hates me." "No," the ship's AI chimed dryly through the speakers. "I simply admire her more. You are statistically less elegant." "Wow," Elias muttered, betrayed by my own software. Arisyth tilted her head, her expression unreadable. "You talk to the ship as if it can wound you." "It can," he said, emotionally. For a moment, the warrior's composure cracked, just a fraction, and a small smile touched her mouth. It faded quickly, but Elias still felt like he had witnessed an eclipse. He turned back to the open panel, pretending to focus on the wires instead of the sound of her armor settling as she crouched beside him. Her presence radiated warmth in the cold bay, a quiet intensity that made the air vibrate. Her voice softened when she spoke again. "I saw what you did during the battle," she said. "You placed yourself between my squad and the plasma breach. That was not logical." "Most of what I do isn't," Elias said. "I call it charm." It was unexpected. A pause unnecessary. Another pause, yet not unwelcome. Elias blinked. Compliments from Arisyth Vale were rare, borderline mythical. "Well," he said quietly, "someone had to make sure you didn't get blown in half." "Someone," she echoed, "or you." Heat crept up his neck. He hated that she noticed everything. "Look," he said, clearing his throat, "if you're trying to thank me, you can just do it normally. I promise I won't die of shock." Her gaze was steady, unwavering. "If I wished merely to thank you, human, I would have said so." "Then what are you doing?" "I am trying," she said slowly, "to understand you." The maintenance bay seemed to still around them, the hum of the engines fading into the background. Elias swallowed. "That sounds dangerous." "Understanding is always dangerous," she replied, "but I find myself curious." He stared at her, she stared back. Something unspoken flickered between them, warm, tentative, charged. Before he could answer, the panel beside him emitted a sharp crack and exploded into a burst of blue sparks. Elias flinched. Arisyth reacted instantly, one arm sweeping around him, pulling him into her as the sparks fizzled out. Her armor pressed against his chest. Her scent, cool and faintly metallic, filled his lungs. Her heartbeat was a steady rhythm against his side. For one impossible second, the universe went quiet. Then, "You are unharmed," she said. He couldn't tell if it was a statement or a question. "Why, yeah," Elias managed, "thanks to you." Arisyth released him, but slowly, as if reluctant to break contact. That panel, she said, is clearly defective. It's not the only thing sparking in here, he muttered, then immediately wanted to crawl into the floor and die. Her ears twitched sharply. You are bold, human. No, he said quickly. No, I'm just sleep-deprived and electrocuted, possibly hallucinating. Her gaze lowered to his face, studying him in a way that felt too intimate, too focused. I do not think you are hallucinating, she said. Why is that? Because, she said, the lights returned to their usual half-dead flicker as Arisyth stepped back, the faint echo of her touch still lingering on Elias' jacket. He wasn't sure which part of the moment rattled him more, the near explosion, the fact that she saved him, or the way she looked at him afterward, like he was a puzzle she had been trained not to solve and suddenly wanted to anyway. He cleared his throat and forced himself to focus on the tools scattered around his feet. So, he said, where were we before the universe tried to slap me? Arisyth folded her arms, not in irritation, but in that poised, regal way she held herself when hiding deeper thoughts. Her long ears angled subtly toward him, their faint bioluminescent lines pulsing with soft light. They always did that when she was thinking hard. You were explaining, she said, why humans willingly touch unstable energy conduits. I wasn't explaining, he corrected. I was panicking gracefully. Some would call that foolish. Some would call that flair. Her lips twitched, just barely. A micro-expression, but for her it was practically a laugh. The ship's AI chimed in overhead. For the record, your technique was statistically poor. Elias sighed. You know, for a ship you talk a lot. It is part of my charm. Arisyth glanced up. Your charm is debatable. Slander, the AI replied. Elias groaned. Please stop flirting with each other in front of me. I do not flirt, Arisyth said sharply. You kind of just did, he muttered. I did not. Well, now you're defensive, which is flirting adjacent. She stepped toward him slowly, and for a moment Elias considered fleeing. But she only crouched beside him, graceful even when surrounded by shattered panels and dangling wires. Her fingers brushed the broken console. Your repairs, they are messy. They work, he defended. For how long? She challenged. I'd give it a few hours. Unacceptable, she said, and then more quietly, but predictable. He raised an eyebrow. Predictable how? Arisyth hesitated. That alone was unusual. She rarely faltered. You fight like this, she said. Not with precision, but with instinct. You act quickly, too quickly, before the cost is known. You leap before you calculate the distance. It is. Her eyes narrowed slightly, disorienting. For you, Elias asked gently. For battle strategies, she corrected too fast. He smirked. She looked away. Look, he said, I know I'm not exactly a model soldier. You are not, she interjected immediately. Wow, thanks. But, she added, her voice shifting, you are different. I have not encountered a human like you. Chaotic, clumsy, or charming? He asked. She considered. Yes. Elias laughed despite himself, but her expression grew more serious. She reached for a loose wire beside him and fixed it with practiced precision, her fingers steady and elegant. These systems are ancient, she said quietly. Older than your species' first steps into deep space. They require care, discipline, a steady hand. She paused, then looked at him. You have a steady heart, she said softly. But your hands, she smirked faintly, are unreliable. Well, my heart thanks you, Elias muttered, but my hands feel attacked. She didn't answer. She simply reached out and without warning took his wrist. Her touch was cool, almost electric, his breath caught. Commander, he managed. I am showing you, she said, how not to die. Her fingers guided his hand closer to the conduit, steadying it. Her body leaned in just enough that he felt the warmth beneath her armor. Her long ears angled forward, glowing faintly as she focused. Hold it like this, she murmured. Slow, deliberate. You must treat the circuit as if it were alive. I'd appreciate it being a little less alive, he whispered. You are trembling. It's your proximity. She blinked slowly. Explain. He swallowed, never mind. Her ears twitched again. He was beginning to understand that meant she wasn't satisfied with an answer. But before she could interrogate him further, the ship jolted violently. Panels rattled, tools slid across the floor. Arisyth immediately shifted into combat-ready stillness. Impact. The AI responded. Asteroid fragment. Minor hull disturbance. No breach. Elias exhaled. Good, because I'm not in the emotional state to handle a hull breach right now. The emotional state? Arisyth repeated. You know, he said, motioning vaguely at the air. Considering the whole holding my hand and teaching me not to die thing. That is simply instruction. Sure, he said, let's call it that. Her golden eyes lingered on him longer than necessary. Something unspoken warmed the space between them, but then she straightened, pulling back with military precision. We must finish repairs, she said firmly. Right, Elias said. Because if we don't, the ship kills me. I will not allow that, she said before she could stop herself. He froze, she froze, silence, then. I mean, she corrected stiffly, not before the war ends. Ahem. And not because of sentiment. Of course. She scowled, you are mocking me. A little. And yet, she said, stepping closer again, you stay near me anyway. Maybe, Elias said softly, I'm trying to understand you too. Her breath caught, so subtle he would have... The hum of the ship steadied into a dull vibration, as if the vessel itself were holding its breath. Arisyth crouched beside the open panel, inspecting Elias' handiwork with that annoyingly intense gaze that could make a person reevaluate their entire life. Elias rubbed the back of his neck. You're going to say I wired it wrong. Yes, she said simply. He sighed. Can't even soften the blow. I could, she said calmly, but then you would not learn. He blinked. That was surprisingly gentle. I am attempting, she said, to apply the concept of constructive criticism. Your people seem obsessed with it. He snorted. Yeah, well, we're fragile. Yes, she agreed immediately. Okay, wow, that was too fast. Her long ears angled forward, a sign he now recognized as either interest or impending danger. Your fragility, she said, is not an insult, it is fascinating. Elias froze, fascinating. She nodded once, regal, unapologetic. Deadly calm, you persist, she said. Even when you break, even when you fear, even when you bleed. My people do not break, not because we are strong, but because we are taught to never allow ourselves to be seen cracking. Her gaze flickered downward. It is a lonely way to live. Elias' chest tightened, not with fear, but with recognition. Arisyth, he said quietly, when you saved me earlier, you didn't do it because of protocol. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Protocol had nothing to do with it. Then why? She opened her mouth to answer, when suddenly a distant explosion trembled through the hull. Not enough to knock them over, but enough to make every tool in the bay rattle. Elias steadied himself. That was definitely not an asteroid this time. Before the AI could speak, Arisyth pressed her palm to the nearest console, her armor plates shifting with a mechanical whisper. Status readouts flickered across the hollow display. Minor external strike, she said. Debris from the battlefield, the shields compensated. So we're not dying. No, okay, good, Elias said. Because emotionally, I can't handle flirting during a crisis. She stiffened, flirting. Not me, he added quickly. You may be, kind of. She stared at him, cold, focused, and somehow offended. I do not flirt. You definitely. I do not flirt. He lifted his hands defensively. All right, you emotionally gesture aggressively. Her ears twitched sharply. Explain. You glare kindly, you criticize supportively. You stare at my hands too long. I do not. She stopped mid-sentence as she realized he was watching her watch his hands. A faint glow pulsed along the edges of her ears, not bright enough to be embarrassment, but close. I observe, she corrected. You observe very intently. It is necessary. For repairs, he said. For understanding, she said. Silence settled between them, heavy but strangely warm. Elias leaned back against a crate and exhaled. This ship, he said, is falling apart. Arisyth nodded. The damage is extensive. And the AI hates me. I do not hate you, the AI said flatly. I simply find your methods statistically chaotic. Yeah, that's hate. It is not. Arisyth actually looked amused, very subtly, but it was there. Elias picked up a scorched connector and rotated it in his hands like a nervous habit. So, Commander, he said, do Ethran warriors ever step away from duty? Take a break, relax. Her expression hardened instantly, not in anger, more like pain. No. Never. It is forbidden. Wow, that's awful. It is the way of our houses, she said. We are forged for service. Our thoughts, our choices, our paths, all predetermined. Her jaw tightened. I have never asked what I wanted, only what was required. Elias stared at her for a long moment. Okay, he said softly, then I'll ask. Her eyes shifted to him warily. Ask what? What do you want, Arisyth? She froze. It wasn't the battlefield kind of stillness. It was something deeper. like someone hearing a question for the first time in their life. "What I want is irrelevant," she said. "Not to me." Her ears angled toward him again, glowing faintly. His voice softened. "Do you even know?" She looked away. No. He scooted closer, slow, careful, like she was something powerful and delicate at the same time. "Then maybe," Elias said, "we figure it out." She whispered. "Yeah," he said, "because you're not just some armored legend to me, I see you." Her breath faltered. A tiny moment, but real. "You see too much," she said softly. "I see just enough." She didn't speak, her eyes locked on his. For a heartbeat, maybe two, the world felt impossibly small. Then, her hand almost involuntarily reached out and brushed his shoulder. Light, barely there, like testing the texture of a dream. Elias swallowed. "Arisyth." She pulled back instantly. That was unintentional. Didn't seem unintentional. It was. Definitely was. Her ears twitched in agitation. Silence. He grinned. Now we're back to normal. But her voice, when she finally spoke again, was different. Lower, warmer, vulnerable. "You ask dangerous questions, Elias. And you give dangerous answers. That is why," she murmured, "I am uncertain around you." He blinked. "Uncertain you." Her eyes flickered with something raw, something she didn't usually let anyone see. "Yes," she said quietly. "You unsettle me." The ship suddenly groaned, long and deep, like something shifting in its bones. The AI's voice crackled overhead. "Warning!" Emergency lights snapped to life one by one, flooding the corridor in dim amber glow. The air hummed with static, and for a moment Elias thought the universe itself was vibrating. Arisyth's grip on his forearm loosened, but she didn't step away immediately. Her ears were angled sharply forward, every line of her posture a tension coil drawn taut. "Ether pulses do not appear without cause," she said. "Something in this sector is waking." Elias swallowed, waking like a creature. "Worse," she murmured, "like a weapon." Well, that explained the dread crawling up his spine. The AI flickered overhead. Power grid destabilizing. Auxiliary systems offline in several sectors. Recommend immediate structural diagnostics. Elias winced. Was that the AI version of "go fix things before we all die"? "Yes," Arisyth said. "No hesitation, huh?" "You require clarity." Elias opened his mouth to respond. But the ship groaned again, deeper this time, like metal remembering pain. Arisyth turned toward him. "We must stabilize the conduit chamber before the next pulse hits." "Right," Elias said. "Lead the way." He expected her to stride ahead like she always did. But instead, she paused, her gaze lingering on him for a long, unreadable moment. Then she stepped closer. "Your stride is uneven," she said quietly, "from when the panel exploded." He blinked. "You notice that?" "I notice everything," she said simply. Her hand, unarmored now, only the thin black undersuit between her and him, rose toward his shoulder, then hovered there like touching him again might break something fragile. "Are you injured?" she asked. "No," he said, then softer, "but you look worried." Her ears twitched, faint bioluminescent patterns rippling across their edges. "I am not worried," she said far too quickly. "So you're lying." "I do not lie." "Then you're strategically withholding truth." Her jaw tightened. "Elias." "It's okay," he said, voice gentler now. "I worry about you too." That got her, her breath caught, subtle but impossible to miss. Her eyes flickered down, away from him, as if the idea itself was too much. "We must continue," she said, her voice lower than before. They moved through the corridor together. Not side by side, but closer. Close enough that her shoulder brushed his every few steps. Close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her beneath the armor plating that remained. The conduit chamber door had jammed halfway open, sparks showering from a cracked energy spool. Elias crouched immediately. "This looks bad," he muttered. "It is unstable," Arisyth agreed. "One wrong movement will rupture the core." "So no pressure. Do not make jokes," she said sharply. "Sorry," he said. "Humor is a human coping mechanism." "I know," she said, "but I need you focused." There was something in her tone, fear, maybe, tucked under command. It made him straighten a little. "All right," he said, "tell me what to do." She knelt beside him, their knees nearly touching as she pointed to the cracked housing. "You must seal this gap first," she murmured, leaning over his shoulder. "If the current leaks, we risk secondary detonation." "Love that for us," he mumbled. Arisyth didn't laugh. Instead, she placed her hand over his, guiding it again. The same way she had earlier, but slower now, more deliberate. "You must not rush," she said. Move with intent, do not fear the energy. That's a tall order. You survived the last pulse, she said softly. You can do this. Something warm moved through him at her words. Encouragement from her felt, intimate in a way he hadn't expected. She adjusted his grip again. Your hands, they tremble. That's because you're touching them. She froze, not a full, rigid stillness, but enough. You said that intentionally, she whispered. Maybe. Her ears glowed faintly, betraying emotion even if her face didn't. I do not understand you, she said. I know. You unsettle me. I know. You make no sense. He smiled, I know. Her lips parted slightly, as if she was about to say something else. Something real, something unguarded. But then, a violent jolt ripped through the chamber. The floor lurched. The conduit flared bright blue. Elias lost his balance, and Arisyth reacted without thinking. She grabbed him, pulling him underneath her as the energy pulse cracked overhead. Her body shielded his entirely, her armor taking the brunt of the heat. Sparks cascaded around them like burning snow. For a second, just a second, they were pressed so close he could feel the rhythm of her breath. Hear it, count it, 1 heartbeat, 2, 3. The pulse faded. She remained where she was, hovering over him, her hands braced on either side of his head, her long ears shimmering with post-impact glow. Are you hurt? She asked. No, he whispered, but you're on top of me. Her expression didn't move. But her ears betrayed her completely. Yes, she said quietly, and you're not moving. No, why? Her breath trembled just once. Because, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, I am recalibrating. He stared at her. She didn't look like a commander, or a legend, or a warrior. She looked like someone realizing she cared before she meant to. Take your time, he murmured. She closed her eyes, just for a moment. Then she pushed herself up, slow and controlled, but her hands lingered on his chest a fraction too long. When she finally stood, she avoided his gaze entirely. We should return to the maintenance deck, she said. The damage is worse than expected. She began walking too quickly, too stiffly. Elias followed, heart hammering. Arisyth. She didn't stop. We must keep moving. He caught her wrist gently. She froze. The second ether pulse slammed into the ship like a silent earthquake. No explosion, no fire, just a crushing pressure that made the air feel thinner, colder, wrong. Elias staggered, grabbing the wall. Arisyth pulled him upright immediately, her grip firm, unwavering. Stay behind me, she commanded. Yeah, he muttered. I figured that out the first time the universe tried to kill me. The lights flickered in rapid, panicked sequences as they moved. The ship felt alive now, breathing in shallow, shuddering breaths. Every corridor vibrated with tension. AI, Arisyth called, source of the ether pulse. Unknown, the AI replied. But the energy signature matches relic-class weaponry. Arisyth's eyes narrowed. Impossible, those constructs were lost millennia ago. Apparently they found themselves, Elias said. This is not humorous, she snapped. I'm coping. Arisyth exhaled sharply, not quite annoyed, more like overwhelmed. Her long ears fluttered in agitation, glowing an anxious silver blue. She was scared, truly scared. He'd never seen that before. Arisyth, he said softly, talk to me. No, she said too quickly. He stepped in front of her, bold, maybe stupid, but necessary. Look at me. She didn't. Her gaze stayed fixed on the corridor ahead, like if she looked away even a second, something would devour them. Commander. Her eyes snapped to his, sharp, bright, trembling just a little. And suddenly the truth spilled out in one fractured exhale. Ether constructs killed my first squad. Elias froze. Arisyth continued, voice low and steady but frayed at the edges. We were not prepared, we thought them myth. Training simulations, ancient warnings exaggerated, but they were real. A pause, her throat tightened. They erased us, not with weapons, with presence, with pressure, with light that crushed bone. Elias stepped closer. How did you survive? Her gaze flickered downward. I did not truly. She pointed to a faint scar along her rib, almost invisible beneath the undersuit. They took my life. The medics returned it. He understood. Her fear wasn't of dying. It was of dying like that again, and of losing him the same way. Arisyth didn't show fear. She buried it under stone, but now it seeped out raw and unguarded. Elias lifted a hand, not touching her but offering. Her long ears angled toward him, uncertain. You don't have to hide this, he said. Not from me. She inhaled, shaky. I cannot lose another squad, she whispered. He smiled faintly. Good thing I'm not a squad. For a heartbeat, she almost laughed. Almost. Then the floor trembled again. The AI's voice lowered. The pulse is coalescing. Something is forming in the central cargo hold. Arisyth stiffened. Then we intercept. We, Elias said. Yes, she said. You refuse to stay behind. That's because you'd run straight into danger without waiting for backup. I am trained, and I'm stubborn. She exhaled a long, tight breath. You should not follow me. I know, but I will. Her ears twitched, this time in something like frustration mixed with a relief. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You unbalance me. Good, Elias said softly, because you balance me. She stared at him like he had said something criminally reckless. Elias Varren, she murmured, you are not making this easier. It's not supposed to be easy, he said. Things worth choosing never are. She stopped breathing. He felt the silence crackle between them. The hum of the ship faded. The dim lights softened. Her eyes searched his, slow, cautious, unbearably tender. You speak of choosing, she whispered. Yeah. As if I have a choice. You do, he said quietly. You always did. Her ears glowed faintly, silver turning to a pale gold. A sign of emotion she didn't know how to hide. Then, a low, warping sound rolled through the ship, like metal bending under a cosmic weight. The AI spoke. The construct is manifesting, structural deformation detected. Arisyth's composure snapped back into place. Elias, she said, stay close. Do not leave my side if I say run. I'm not running. Her jaw clenched. You must. No, he said softly but firmly. If you fall, I fall, that's the deal. She blinked slow, stunned, as if no one in her entire lifetime had spoken to her that way. You, she breathed, are impossible. Yeah, he said, but you keep choosing me anyway. She made a sound he couldn't place, half frustration, half surrender. Then she grabbed his forearm, pulling him beside her as the corridor ahead warped, light bending like molten glass. Ether energy converged, swirling into a shimmering, pulsing shape. A silhouette, humanoid but wrong, soft and bright and terrifying like a star that decided to walk. Arisyth stepped forward, placing herself between Elias and the apparition. Her stance was perfect. Regal, terrifying, protective. Elias swallowed. Tell me that's not sentient. It is worse, she whispered. It is searching. For what? Her long ears flattened. For minds to break. The construct drifted closer, light bending around it like gravity pulling threads. Arisyth tightened her grip on Elias' arm. Do not look into the light, she said. Then what do I do? Stay with me, anchor to my voice. Her voice, her presence, the ether construct hovered at the center of the corridor, a shifting lattice of light and pressure that bent the air around it. Every motion it made pushed against Elias' skull like a migraine turning into a tidal wave. Arisyth lifted her blade, its edge crackling with energy. She stood between Elias and the construct like a living shield carved from moonlit steel. Anchor to my voice, she repeated, low and steady. If the construct reaches your mind, it will unmake you. Great, Elias muttered through clenched teeth. I always wanted my skull to implode today. Silence, she hissed, not out of anger but fear for him. The construct shifted. Its form rippled like a mirage, and then a pulse of pale, hungry light surged outward. Arisyth reacted instantly. Her hand shot back, grabbing Elias by the front of his jacket and dragging him against her as the pulse slammed into her armor. The impact cracked across the corridor like a thunderclap. Her knees bent, absorbing the force. Elias felt it, felt her tremble for the first time. Arisyth. I am fine. She was, her breath hitched. Her grip tightened around him like she feared he might vanish. Another pulse built in the construct's core, humming like a distant scream wrapped in light. Arisyth pushed Elias behind a fallen support beam. Stay low, she ordered. No. Do not argue. You're hurt. She froze, her long ears lowered, trembling. In all the battles she had survived, in all the scars she bore, maybe no one had ever said those words to her with worry instead of authority. I am trained to endure this, she said, voice strained. I'm not trained to watch you die. Something broke behind her eyes, not physically but emotionally. A crack in armor thicker than metal. She turned her head toward him. Elias. He didn't let her finish. The construct's second pulse surged. Arisyth leapt forward with a warrior's roar, slashing through the collapsing light with her blade. The impact scattered the energy like a broken star. For a moment the construct flickered, confused, disrupted, but it wasn't gone. It is adapting, the AI warned. It will shift its frequency to match her counterattack. Meaning what? Elias shouted. Meaning, Arisyth growled, chest rising with exertion, it will become stronger. Elias' mind raced. He gripped a loose power conduit beside him, the one they had nearly died repairing an hour ago. "Wait," he muttered. "If we destabilize the power grid in this section." "No," Arisyth snapped. "You will detonate the entire corridor." "Only if I do it wrong." She stared at him, horrified. "Elias, no." He stepped out from behind the beam. Her eyes widened. "Stay back." He didn't. He walked toward her, toward the shifting construct, toward the danger she had always placed herself in alone. "If you go down fighting," he said, voice shaking but certain, "I won't be 3 rooms away. I'll be right here." "This is not bravery," she hissed. "It is recklessness. You taught me that sometimes they look the same." She choked on a breath, something raw, something she'd never meant to feel. "Your life," she whispered, "is worth more than—" "It's mine to give," he cut in gently, "and I'm choosing where to stand." Her ears tilted back, glowing gold in distress. "Elias," she whispered, "please." The construct surged. Arisyth lunged, but Elias was faster this time. He jammed the conduit into the floor panel, twisting wires with shaking hands, relying on instinct, panic, and maybe a little miracle. "Elias, no." The grid snapped. A massive shockwave erupted, silent, blinding, electrifying. Ether energy bent inward, pulled against itself like a collapsing lung. The construct shrieked in a soundless burst of light. And shattered, Elias collapsed with it. Arisyth was on him in an instant. "Elias, Elias, look at me." Her hands cupped his face, her long ears trembling, her blade clattering to the ground forgotten. "Do not close your eyes," she breathed, voice breaking. "Stay with me." He blinked at her, dazed. I'm not dead." "No," she said, voice shaking. "You are not permitted to die." His lips lifted weakly. "Permitted." "Yes," she whispered fiercely, "because you have become important." He stared at her. "Important," he echoed. Her forehead touched his, gentle, reverent, a warrior's vow made soft. "You unsettle me," she said, breath warm against his lips. "You disarm me, you make me." She searched for the word, found it. "Feel." He swallowed. "Arisyth." "Do not speak," she whispered. "Just breathe, stay, anchor to me as I anchored to you." She closed her eyes. Her hands cradled him. Her voice lowered to a trembling confession. "I choose this, I choose you." He exhaled, shaky and disbelieving, and let his hand slip weakly over hers. "And I choose you," he whispered back, "armor or no armor." Her breath caught. Her long ears flickered with a glow so bright it lit the space between them. The AI's voice finally returned, quiet and almost respectful. Structural integrity restored, life signs stable, Etha's signature vanished. Arisyth ignored it. She held Elias like he was the first real thing she'd ever touched. And he held her back like she